Happy New No King's Day, everybody. The original No King's Day. It can be a little bit like the N-word in that we can recapture it from the idiots who created it. Back on the Highline, it's been quite a while. Look at this odd bit of artwork. It's got to have some meaning to it. It seems creepy to me. There's some new additions, I think, here to the Highline that we haven't evaluated recently. It's been quite a while since I've been up here. It's an absolutely beautiful day. A little hot, but that's fine. It's July 4th, it's summertime. People want it to be hot, but it's not too hot. It can be oppressive at times in New York City during the summer, but this is a beautiful day. I think it's about 80, maybe 82, something like that. Better than the $2 bill. I don't get it, but yeah. Yeah, well, actually, you know, a lot of people were making some comments about the thumbnail, kind comments. Thank you, everybody. That is a special, there's a rare photograph of me from 1776. Obviously, using AI to inject myself into this, I guess, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. I'm not sure what that original painting is, but I thought it would be appropriate for No King's Day. This is the real No King's Day. And listen, I appreciate our British friends and their love of the royal family. I don't understand when we, in America, have all kinds of coverage of the royal family and act like, you know, and Harry, what's his name, comes over here and says he thinks the First Amendment is bonkers. First of all, the First Amendment allows him to say that, but who cares what he thinks? It was created to get rid of his kind, specifically the monarchs. And I wanted to talk about that a bit today. On my way to the post office here on the Highline, I've got some mail for Nina. Better be sure. Yeah, this is just the Arlington clerk's office that we're showing the address of. It's not exactly for Nina, it's for her lawyer and the court. Filings, yes, in Jankovitz v. Goodman. She's really stupid, Nina. She thinks she's smart, but she's wrong. I say that because, see, I can talk about her now. I won in court the other day, and I haven't spoken about it a lot, but basically what was happening there was a little more than 2 years ago, people might remember my octogenarian mother had a pretty serious spinal surgery, and I was very concerned about it. I'm not a big fan of surgery. I like it when it works, but I'm concerned that lots of things can go wrong. My mom is getting old. Many doctors had said, you know, she's not a candidate for this kind of surgery, can't help her. So I was very worried. I went there to Florida to look after her and my father. You know, they're both getting kind of old. Help them do shopping and cook and stuff like that. And just to generally take care of her during that surgery. The good news is it was a huge success, even better than I could have ever imagined. Thank goodness for that. And it's changed her life. You know, she was pretty close to immobile before this, constant pain, couldn't get up off the couch. It was really terrible. You know, because she wasn't that old, but it was ruining her life. And now she's able to walk, exercise. It was life-changing. But the point is, I was down there for many weeks, and the horrible, evil scumbags who have dedicated themselves to trying to ruin my life, they watch everything I do. Nina is one of these people. She watches everything I do. According to her, she presented evidence in court to that effect. She had a whole spreadsheet with dozens and dozens of links. Well, I don't know if she had the links. She didn't provide me with the links. That's part of what this mail is about. But she had videos and posts and quotes and different little pieces of things that I've done. She has said historically that she monitors everything that I do. Very Stasi-ish of her, isn't it? Monitor everything, create lists and databases of things that you violate, verboten things that you might be doing. Anyway, the point is, 2 years ago, when I was caring for my mother during this very worrisome period where she could have been permanently immobilized, wouldn't that ruin your life if you couldn't walk? thank goodness that didn't happen. But I believe George's brother was the one who interacted with her and her attorneys, also horrible scumbags, unethical, lying, vicious, evil people who would take advantage of the infirmity of an 80-plus-year-old woman to try to gain an advantage for themselves. They can't play fair because they know they're losers, and they would definitely lose if they play fair. This guy doesn't like what I'm talking about. He's free not to listen. But the point is, they are losers, and they can't win unless they cheat. So what they did was they served me at my home here in New York City with some documents that were telling me that there was going to be a hearing. They basically said that I had been harassing Nina. She was seeking a restraining order against me. This guy's got a lot to look at. She was seeking a restraining order against me for a variety of different allegations that she made. And I didn't really know what was going on. I came home. I had driven home north from Florida. It took like 3 days. Got home, and there was this summons affixed to my door. In New York, you can do this thing called nail and mail, where you get served with process, and they stick it on the door. And so this thing said, hey, there's a hearing. I think not the next day, but like one day after. So I basically was home for a day, and then just had to go right away the next day back south to Virginia for this hearing about a restraining order. And I mean, I knew that it was shenanigans going on. And it's funny, I came right up here to the Highline because what I wanted to do was to set a trap for these malicious people, a counter-lawfare trap. Nothing to harm anybody, just a clever sort of mind trick. And so I pre-recorded a video of myself talking about, people might have seen that video, I held up the restraining order, the TRO, the temporary restraining order, held it up. And I guess the hearing was on, trying to make it a permanent restraining order. And I guess what the TRO does, remember, I'm not an attorney, so I may say things that are legally incorrect because nothing I'm saying here is legal advice. These are just my opinions about things and statements about occurrences that happened in the public domain. But here's some new art that we haven't seen. So I went to this hearing in Arlington. See, it wasn't circuit court. It was like Arlington General Court, Arlington General District Court, something like that. Definitely not district court in the Virginia district. I don't even know what district that is. But this was state, Commonwealth of Virginia court. And I think it was called Arlington General District Court, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, that's a weird kind of kangaroo court hearing. Here, this is artwork from Ty Shani. The sun is a flame that haunts the night. Weird. Looks like a Disney Fantasia candle to me. I don't know. But that was like a kangaroo kind of court where the judge, what was his name, Rucker? Nina said a bunch of contradictory stuff. And I said, look, I never threatened her. I don't know what she's talking about. She said she felt threatened because people watched my videos and made fun of her or contacted her or did something. I never went anywhere near her until she summoned me to court. I have no desire to go near her. Nobody should go near her. No one should do anything. Don't contact her. Don't tweet at her. I don't even think she's on Twitter anymore, although she obviously is. She's monitoring everything I do on there. But the point is, she said in the court that I never threatened her, that people watching the show had threatened her, but yet this Judge Rucker decided that that was sufficient grounds for me to be punished with this restraining order. And then, I forget the exact details, but somehow in contesting that, it sent it to Arlington Circuit Court, which is like the regular state court. I guess this first thing was some kind of emergency. I don't know what. But when that hearing with Judge Rucker ended, I was like, this is absurd. How do I get the transcript from this? And they're like, oh, there is no transcript. You got to bring your own court reporter. And I was like, what? This is like DIY court. What the hell is this? But again, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know how these things go. I'm learning little details along the way, and I'm in a precarious period right now because I guess I've been doing this for so long that my skills at writing briefs are a little bit unusually good for a pro se, and so it has a tendency to cause judges to not want to show me the kind of leniency that is normally afforded to pro se litigants. But yet I still have never been to law school, haven't been in too many court cases, haven't certainly been in court that much, and in a lot of cases I still have no idea what the hell I'm doing. So it's a weird sort of position to be in, but there was no transcript from the thing. Here's more weird art that we haven't seen before. There was no transcript from that. And then we went to Arlington Circuit Court. That was the first time I met Judge Judith Wheat, who is the historic first female chief judge of that Arlington Circuit Court. She's historic. I read that, so it's got to be true. But anyway, Judge Wheat, you got to separate the wheat from the chaff. What is this? It's coolers. Maybe they collected these from all of the Tren de Aragua ladies who were selling sandwiches around the city and painted them up. Or perhaps it's sponsored by the Igloo Company. Huh. It does say U.S. Inhumane Cruelty and Enforcement. So it's got something to do with these ladies selling food from coolers, I would presume. It's funny how sometimes my knee-jerk reactions to things, I don't know what this is about. But I mean, you know, if you want a society that is unregulated by laws where people decide they want to sell food out of coolers, I think what we want is an organized society where we agree upon laws and everybody agrees to follow the law, because one person says, well, I'd like to sell illegal sandwiches out of coolers, and somebody else says, oh, I'd like to sell crack cocaine, and somebody else says, well, I'd like to put poison in these illegal sandwiches, and because I don't actually have a store or a restaurant, nobody knows who I am, so I can't be held to account. So if anybody gets sick or dies or eats a sandwich that's been maliciously poisoned, there's no recourse. I don't know. They just like to make stupid artwork like that. Anyway, so Judge Wheat, we had this whole hearing, and here's how it goes. In order to get a restraining order against someone, you need to demonstrate that you have been threatened with violence or a violent act, and that you were caused to feel a threat of injury or bodily harm or sexual assault. There's a lot of pretty specific elements. See, this is the thing. Just like you can't just decide to sell sandwiches out of a cooler because that's what you'd like to do, you can't just decide what you think harassment or stalking is and then say this person's doing that, take some punitive criminal action against them, strip away their rights, make them have to spend thousands of dollars traveling back and forth to court, staying at hotels, gasoline, parking, all the time lost, opportunity costs, all of that stuff. You can't just decide that you think this is what harassment is or this is what stalking is. She said so many things. The thing that's so reprehensible about Nina is that she's just a vicious, malicious liar. Some people lie about stupid things that are maybe not that big a deal. I mean, if Nina was trying to sell you some kind of, you know, let's say she was trying to sell you a phone and she said, oh, this is the best phone in the world. And then you found out, oh, well, the camera's not that good and the thing is made of plastic and it falls apart. Maybe she's being dishonest about the phone. But is that the worst thing in the world? I mean, buyer beware. You can use your discernment. The problem here is she is lying to try to damage people's rights and to really take away very important things, not just from me. I'm talking about everybody. Keep in mind, I never knew Nina before any of this started. I didn't have some personal grudge against her. I really don't care about her very much, except for the fact that she came on the internet and the news telling everybody that she's going to, be the Disinformation Governance Board director, and she's going to govern what is information and what is disinformation. And if she doesn't like what you have to say about COVID-19 or the 2020 election or Joe Biden or immigration or abortion or any number of things that are of great public interest, if she doesn't like it, she gets to govern what you're saying and take you off the internet. And she'll say, no, I don't, or whatever she says, but she's back to lying. We were talking last night with Charles about a nonprofit that she claims to be running, something called the American Sunlight Project that, I don't know why she thinks it's a nonprofit. She's profiting from it. She just bought a new house. She's paying people. Those people are profiting from it. She's got a staff there. It's not registered with the IRS under IRC 501c3 or 4. She's made a lot of materially misleading statements. I don't know if we can call them outright lies, but she's got a lot of things posted in public on the internet telling people how they can make tax-deductible contributions to these things. Certainly in the context of talking about a nonprofit, suggesting that people can make tax-deductible contributions or non-tax-deductible contributions. She allows you now to choose between a 501c3 or a 501c4. Very detailed in the language. She says it's a 501c3 project. I don't know what that is. You can be a 501c. Oh, wait. Up there is where that thing is that I wanted to see. We'll go to the post office. Let's go back up here because I want people to see. We've got that weird bird up there. She says it's a 501c3 project. Does that mean she's working on becoming a 501c3? Does the public know that, or are they misled by that statement? Particularly when you speak about it in the context of making tax-exempt contributions. She even says, for instance, through a donor-advised fund. Well, what is she talking about there? Remember in April, she was talking to Congress with Matt Taibbi there. So loud. Why is it going so slowly? Is it that much of an emergency? We got to go 20 miles an hour to the emergency? Remember, she was talking to Congress with Matt Taibbi there, and she was talking about, her her nonprofit thing because of its tax status, according to her, doesn't need to disclose who its donors are. Well, I'm not sure that that's true, but it seems like she's kind of talking about what Charles Ortel and Bob Bishop have told us about, that through these donor-advised funds, which Nina's website suggests you could make a contribution to her American Sunlight Project with, which pays her and her staff, and then she goes and buys houses and pays lawyers to take me to court and stuff like that. But the donor-advised fund, that's like if you are, let's say you're investing with, one of these investment things, brokerage house, whatever you want to call it, I'm sure there's fancier ones, but Charles Schwab or T. Rowe Price or something like that. They have charitable funds where they'll take a bunch of money and pool it together. So instead of, Jason giving $1,000 to the American Bullshit Project, Jason can give $1,000 to the T. Rowe Price Donor Advised Fund, and then one of the things it donates to can be Nina's charity. So they like that because it obscures where the money is coming from. Now, I don't know if we're having any protests here today in New York City. It seems pretty quiet. There's actually kind of not a lot of people around, which I enjoy, to tell you the truth. It's quiet. It's a little bit kind of back to the older days with less maniacs, fewer maniacs. The fewer the better, if you ask me. But the point is, these donor-advised funds, I don't think they should be allowed because they obscure where the money is coming from that goes to these things that are in many cases used to fund activity that should not be tax-exempt nonprofit activity. So, she had this whole complex structure where money was going to some fiscal support, something or other, And that was a 501c3. And she's talking about a 501c3 project. I don't know what that is. I never heard of that before. Charles never heard of that before. Charles knows a lot more about this stuff than I do. So I don't know, it sounds like bullshit to me. It sounds like a way to get money to bring lawsuits against people like me and just enrich idiots like Nina. There was something, I guess it must be down that way. We'll have to check it on the way back. Still just the big giant bird up here. The pigeon. Strange, isn't it? So she's telling people, hey, donate money because what we're going to do is make it more expensive, make lies more expensive. So first of all, she doesn't ever use any evidence to prove that something is a lie. I think that's an important difference between what she does and what I do. A lot of people hear the name Crowdsource the Truth, and particularly people who want to disparage me. They'll say, okay, Mr. Truth, crowdfunding the truth. That's not what it is. There's a difference between crowdsourcing and crowdfunding. I do appreciate people who sponsor Crowdsource the Truth on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. Also people who are going to Odyssey. You know, it's been free on Odyssey for the past several months. They've just implemented their cryptocurrency payment system, and they've announced yesterday that it's one more week of free Odyssey for people who were historically sponsoring with credit cards, but none of that sponsorship money has been reaching me for the past 3 months. Nobody on there has been charged. So I do appreciate everybody who is sponsoring on Odyssey, and I realize a lot of people don't even know that. But if after next week you want to continue watching the sponsor exclusive content, you've either got to get onto the Odyssey cryptocurrency payment system, which thank you, Chris, the one and only guy that's done that. And I recognize it's a little complicated for some people, so those people might want to switch to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or one of the other systems. You can also get sponsor exclusive content and sponsor the show by following me on X at JG_CSTT and subscribing on there. But the point is, I'm not crowdfunding the truth. That would suggest that somehow I know the truth or I'm creating the truth. Of course, I do always speak truthfully, or to the best of my knowledge what is truthful. I don't deceive people, but anybody could tell you, oh, trust me, I'm telling the truth. I'm searching for the truth. The crowdsourcing aspect is looking for it. And sometimes we find it walking around, you know, we just see people. Remember, we saw some early truth. What a cute puppy golden retriever. We saw some truth about Zoran Mamdani just by showing up when he wasn't that well known and photographing him. He had a bunch of people around him, somebody wearing a Planet Over Profit t-shirt. I bet you there's some truth in that. Planet Over Profit is another one of these pretty screwy pseudo non-profit things that doesn't seem to have an EIN. Nina's nonprofit doesn't have an EIN, an employer identification number. Maybe it does, but it's not published anywhere. That stuff is supposed to be public if you're a nonprofit, 501c4 or 501c3. She's now purporting to have organizations under both of those IRS organizations. I mean, that's not the way you can do it. So she has put out there this notion that because she's been stalked and harassed, and she's referring to me, which first of all, she has not legitimately established that that is what I did. And we've got her now under oath saying that many times, that she doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. I asked her, I gotta find a way to share the transcripts of these things with everybody in a way that is digestible. They're quite long. But just the other day in court, I asked her, do you know what the elements of harassment are under Virginia law? And her fat, disgusting, horrible lawyer said, I object, Your Honor. That calls for a legal opinion. I said, I'm not asking her legal opinion. I'm asking her knowledge of a fact, if she knows it or not. And Judge Wheat reluctantly overruled the objection and allowed me to ask her. And she said she doesn't know. And I said, right, because you're just making it up. You know, you being annoyed doesn't necessarily constitute harassment. And the funny thing is, she played the Norm Eisen video in court. She played the video of me chasing Norm Eisen on the public street outside the courthouse. Her lawyer lied, or maybe she didn't lie. Maybe she's too stupid to know that the courthouse is not Norm's place of business. It's a public place. She said, oh, Jason went to Mr. Norman's place of business to harass him. No, I didn't. I walked around the corner and there the idiot was. And I know who he is, and I had a lot of questions off the top of my head to ask the guy. So they wanted to present to the court a bunch of false information that I'm in a regular practice of stalking people. Nina came up with this nonsense that I had waited for hours for Ben Whitty's. Waited for hours. After he went into that lunch place, it's true I did wait there for a few minutes to see if he would come out, and he didn't, but I was hardly waiting hours, and I definitely didn't wait hours when he first showed up. I, again, was just walking down the street, and the dude popped out. I didn't even know he was in New York. I didn't expect to see Ben Whitty's that day, and you can hear it in my voice. I'm like, Ben Whitty's, my man. He's another guy who I had a lot of questions for, but you know, they were trying to make it appear to the court that I was maliciously stalking and harassing Nina, because I guess Nina thinks she's so great and interesting that people would do that. And she said things like I called her 60 times. I think it was more like 2 or 3. I called her once after she was on the news and they said she was going to be the Disinformation Governance Board director. And we had a pretty polite conversation at first. I asked her if she would agree to an interview to talk about what this Disinformation Governance Board is all about. It's a government agency. I'm a citizen of the United States, so I was interested in knowing what that was all about. It's a matter of public interest. And she said she couldn't do the interview because she was under embargo. She makes a real big point of the fact that I recorded the phone call without her permission. But again, she thinks that things she doesn't like should be against the law. The reason they can't do anything to me about that is that I was in New York and it was completely legal to record the phone call. I don't need her permission. I mean, that's like her saying, I'm having a sandwich in my apartment and she doesn't like chicken BLTs. Who cares? She's not involved with that. The phone call was my property once it was recorded, to do with as I please. I mean, she doesn't like it, but whatever, that's the way the law works. She reiterated that so many times because she's so upset about it. That's a very astute dog. Looking right at me. So she didn't like that I recorded the phone call. I called her that once. She said she can't do an interview because she's under embargo. Then she got fired. She says she resigned. I don't know why she would resign from her dream job. I have to find this document that I have from 2 years ago when this all came up. I think it might have been the police report that I got through FOIA. She's filed several police reports to try to get me arrested because in addition to just lying, she wants to lie to try to ruin my life. What do you think would happen if you got arrested? Once you're under the control of the police, if they break your arm, poke your eye out, you get sick in jail, something happens, somebody in there beats you up, do you think that's, you know, the same as like United Airlines customer service when you miss your flight, or maybe it'd be a worse experience? Now, how do I guess I gotta go that way. I don't know if you can get to the front from over here. I haven't been in this part of the train station too much yet. Looks like you can't. That just leads to tracks over there. But the point is, she's a malicious liar. You know, she's not just lying and saying, hey, buy this phone, buy this frozen dinner, buy these flowers. She's lying to try to really harm people. She's a really evil person, in my opinion. And that's why the law must be used to stop her from continuing to lie and do evil. When I'm talking about the evidence that I see that causes me to make allegations that she's stealing tax-exempt funds, that's the misuse of the 501c3 and 501c4. That's right in the whole Ben Whitty's, Norm Eisen school of grifting. And by the way, why did she bring up Norm Eisen and Ben Whitty's in the hearing? It had nothing to do with her. Is she defending them? Did they tell her to do that? I think maybe. Certainly could have. She seems to be aligned with them. And they also use 501c3s to allow their donors to get tax exemptions on donations to then send funds to 501c4s. This thing is going wonky here. How come it's, what's happening? Losing balance. So I don't know, where did she learn how to do that? How to mix a 501c3 with a 501c4 to get funds. Here's somebody that's going to a No Kings protest, no doubt, with the mask on and the crazy person bag. Off to make trouble, no doubt. Don't record me. You don't have my permission to record me. They're in public, stupid. So we're going to send a little mail to Nina here. Excuse me, not to Nina, to her lawyer. I could send mail to Nina. I'm no longer disallowed from contacting her, but I have no reason to. I have no desire to. So here's what she's stupid about. So this all came about 2 years ago when I was trying to just care for my mother, minding my own business, caring for my family. And I believe George's brother advised them that I was out of town and now was a strategic moment to initiate this process. I had sued Nina. So I called her twice. I said, hey, will you give me an interview about this Disinformation Governance Board? She said no. Now, is the post office closed today for 4th of July? People are going to say, oh, yes, it's closed. But this is a special magical post office. It will be closed. But maybe even this lobby is open? Yeah, I knew it would be. Because all we want to do is drop mail. Large envelopes. There you go, Nina. You're getting served, is what that is. And it's getting filed with the court. So, the point is, what was the point? Right, called her on May something. No, April. I called her at the end of April 2022, and she said she can't do the interview because of an embargo. So I continued investigating her and learned that she had this private for-profit called Sophia's Strategies that admitted on there that it was receiving money from these foreign nonprofits, Canadian, British, and Italian nonprofits paying her, I thought, while she was working for the Department of Homeland Security. And I posed the question. People can go back and look at that evidence now. It's on X. I was able to repost it after I prevailed in getting this restraining order eliminated. Not the original version that included her address. I'm not trying to dox her address. That just got in there inadvertently. She was trying to make people believe that I had repeatedly done that maliciously. I don't care about her address. What I care about is the breaking of the law. And so I deleted that part with her address. It was unimportant to the rest of the video, but people can see the important parts of the video. It's still up there on X, at JG_CSTT. So I said, oh, she's working for the Department of Homeland Security, but she's getting all this money from these foreign government entities. Shouldn't this person be registered with FARA? And whenever I talk about that in court, she makes all kinds of funny faces and scoffs like this is a conspiracy theory, but it's facts. And she said, she explained it a little bit. I don't have the transcript yet from this one from just last week, but she said something like her lawyers advised her to register with FARA, and now she's unregistered. But whatever, at the time that I said it, obviously her lawyers didn't advise her to do that because there was no possibility that I was correct. They realized that it could be possible that she was in violation and she should register to make sure that it looks like she's at least trying to comply, so that when she goes into court or when she gets, by the way, that's not something I could take her to court for. That's a criminal violation. So obviously her lawyers advised her to do that, probably thinking, hey, you know, if Trump becomes the president, you could get criminally jammed up. Shouldn't be riding on the sidewalk. Jackass. That's a guy who should go to Alligator Alcatraz. Obviously someone advised her that she was at risk of being criminally charged, and she should, I would think, why else would a lawyer advise her to do that? I can't sue her for not being registered under FARA. It's a criminal statute. It's the government that would take action against her if she wasn't in compliance. So she said her lawyers advised her to do that. That doesn't prove that what I said was wrong. That would seem to indicate that what I said was correct. So she got angry about that. And when I first published that information about FARA, someone, and I would think it has to be her or somebody acting on her behalf, because nobody else really cares about me publishing her FARA registration, but immediately my Twitter account was locked. So the second time I called her once in April saying, will you give me an interview? She said no. Then she got fired. I think she reiterates that she resigned. In this document that I have that was, I think, a police report, she talks about how this was her dream job. I think she even admits how upset she was when it ended. But why would she resign voluntarily from her dream job? It sounds to me like somebody said, hey dummy, we're closing this thing down and you're gonna get fired, so you should resign, or something to that effect. See, now why it's crooked again. Let's see if we can resolve this. People watching are gonna be I don't know why you would resign from your dream job. It doesn't seem to be the type of thing that people do. It seems to be the type of thing you do when they say, well, we don't want to do this, but we have to close the thing, and rather than firing you, why don't you resign? It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Her job ended, and she was pissed. So I said something about, oh, well, then she registered for FARA, and I'm trying to make sure I get the timing right. The essence of it is, I posted about her registering for FARA, and she got my Twitter account. Someone who didn't like me posting about her FARA, who I believe had to be acting on her behalf, got my Twitter account locked up. And so then I contacted her again. Now, sorry, after she got fired, I called her and said, hey, now that you're fired, can we do an interview now that you're not under embargo anymore? And she said, no, stop calling me. So that was 2 phone calls. Once initially to ask for an interview, once after the Disinformation Governance Board closed, where I said, now that it's no longer open, I can't imagine there's still an embargo. Then she said, stop calling me. And I did. I didn't continue calling her after that, okay? Now, she might have had a case for saying I was harassing her if I called her the next day and the next day and 5 times in a row. That could be construed as harassment for sure, particularly if a person tells you not to contact them. I've told George's mentally ill brother many, many, many times to stop contacting me. He never listens. He persists. It's harassment, but the cops won't do anything. And one of the things that he does is he's constantly bringing meritless lawsuits against me so that he can then send me harassing emails and send harassing emails to third parties related to the meritless lawsuits, so that if I try to contact the cops and say he's harassing me in the way that she did, the cops will say, oh, well, he's saying it's civil litigation, we can't get involved in this, you have to deal with the court, okay? I wasn't doing that. I called her once, asked for an interview, called her again after her employment status changed, and I thought it was a possibility that the answer to the question might have changed. She said, no, stop calling me. I stopped calling her. Then something else changed. I didn't contact her. I just posted this public domain information that she was registered under FARA, and poof, my Twitter account goes away. So I presumed that she had done that. And I started sending her emails saying that I believe you have taken action to destroy my access to Twitter. And if you don't reverse that, I'm going to take legal action against you. And she didn't respond. So I do believe her when she says I called her after that. I don't specifically remember it because we didn't talk, but I may have called her to leave voicemails saying essentially, I'm going to sue you if you don't undo this. It's very difficult to see the screen right now. So that might be true, but she said 60 times. I don't think there's any way I called her 60 times. If I did call her multiple times, it would have been calling her, no answer, not leaving a message. Calling back a half an hour later, no answer, call back an hour later. When you're trying to contact someone to tell them that you're going to sue them, it's different than the way you might contact a friend or a business associate. I was persisting in trying to contact her. I definitely did not leave 60 voicemails. I don't even think I would have called her 60 times. I might have called her many times. Again, I don't remember if I did. I'm talking about the way I would go about something like this. Send an email, no response. Place several phone calls, no answer, then leave a voicemail. Something like that may have occurred, but she didn't present a call log showing 60 phone calls. She just said, I recall the number 60 is what she said. Maybe it's out of balance. It might be out of balance. She said 60. She didn't present any evidence of that. It might have been 6, including the first 2 and then the third. That sounds more like it to me, actually. Send an email, call her once, call her again, call a third time, leave a message. That sounds more like what I would do. And she provided no evidence. So anyway, after that threat of litigation with no response from her, I did sue her. And concurrent with her getting sued, I have to go check the exact dates, because I think she did this to try to prevent me from suing her or to try to show that I was suing her to retaliate for this. But that was definitely not the case. If anything, she brought the restraining order action in retaliation for the lawsuit, and I'm pretty sure that is what happened. Again, I'd have to go back and check the dates. But I wasn't communicating with her at all until she started doing what I perceived to be illegal, and then somebody who seems to have her interests in mind attacked my property, which is the Twitter account. So I'm not going out and seeking her out, but that's the way that all happened. So when Judge Wheat in 2023 on June 8th decided, because something I said, and I gotta be careful here, because I don't want to repeat it and antagonize the judge, but there's a question about a comment that I made. I called a particular person a demon spawn. Now, if any person in general is referred to as a demon spawn, that means they were spawned by a demon, and therefore the mother is a demon. So if anyone were to be called a demon spawn, in my opinion, and I'm the one who's accused of saying it, it's an insult to the mother. It's not very polite to the spawn either, but it doesn't matter. The law doesn't require you to be polite. And so here's what I'm getting at. I technically won this Jankowitz v. Goodman. The restraining order is over. And she also wanted me to pay $10,000 in legal fees that she ran up, and the court did not make me do that. So by a lot of measures, I won. However, I so resent the fact that this came back, because here's what happened. In 2023, the judge said, oh, that statement crossed a line. That demon spawn statement crossed a line. And she never said what line it crossed. The line that it would need to cross is to cross over into a threat of criminal violence in order for the judge to be able to take action against me in the way that she did. That's the only line. The First Amendment allows you to insult someone by calling them a demon spawn. It can be rude, offensive. It might cause emotional distress. There's other civil action that can be taken if somebody feels you've intentionally caused them emotional distress. I think that's a pretty high bar to prove. and would give me all kinds of opportunity to seek mental health evaluations of the person. But the point is, in order for something to be subject to this quasi-criminal restraining order action, it's got to cross over into a threat of criminal violence. And just referring to a person as a demon spawn is not that. Not saying someone should do something to anyone, not suggesting that I would do something to anyone, just making a unflattering critical comment, hyperbolic political rhetoric. And that's what that was. So I tried to basically say that in not as articulate terms as I am right now, because I hadn't read the statutes. I didn't have the level of experience that I have now. Not to say that I'm a lawyer, because I'm not, but I certainly know more about court and the law and all this kind of stuff now than I did then. And the judge said, no, I don't care. I find that to be a threat, and we're gonna give her this restraining order. So I was outraged, and I tried to appeal the judge's order. And I was calling the circuit court like every day, not every day. I called the circuit court and I said, okay, I filed an appeal, now what? And they said, I said, I know you can't give me legal advice, but just from a procedural standpoint, what is the next step? And they said, you have to wait, you can't do anything until it is, filed with the appellate court, and that takes 90 days. And I was like, what? So I called quite frequently to check, is it there yet? No, they said it could take up to 90 days. So I had to call and check. And I called every couple of weeks, nope. And then after 3 months, sure enough, they said, okay, it's there with the appellate court. So then I contacted the appellate court, and they said, no, you've waited too long, the appeal period has expired, you have forfeited the appeal. And I was like, what? This is an incredibly bullshit process right here. It's a good thing that didn't stop the show. That woman just smashed into my phone. It was just an unbelievably unfair, unjust, ridiculous process in that Arlington Circuit Court. And also, the other thing that I've learned recently is that Virginia has been criticized for their handling of these types of actions, because in Virginia they consider, that this person's privacy, and because they're being, and this may be legitimate in some cases. Obviously these restraining orders are intended for people who are being subject to threats of violence, crazy ex-boyfriends, ex-husbands, whatever it is, pursuing people, threatening people, maybe even actually doing harm. Obviously, in cases of domestic violence, there can be a need for keeping certain aspects of it under seal. Minor children, private health information, things like that. But Virginia, I've learned, has been explicitly criticized for their handling of this stuff because the docket is totally sealed. Even I cannot see the docket. It's crazy. So you really don't know what's going on in the case. It's like a star chamber. And I really do think that Nina and the sophisticated attorneys that she got involved with this are aware of that, and they've weaponized this process to use it against people like me who are reporting on things like her abusing nonprofit structures for her own personal inurement to earn money, buy homes, take me to court, pay lawyers, all those kinds of things that people would use money for. I think she's stealing money. Haven't proven that yet in court, but we're gonna try to get her arrested. That's not a threat of violence. That's an explanation of what I'm doing. I don't control the Department of Justice or the police. If I did, she surely would have been arrested long ago. But I don't, so I am just speaking about facts and things that are happening in the public domain. So basically, I lost that appeal. That was 3 or 4 months after it happened. And I just said, you know what? There were options. I could have filed this thing called a precipice or something like that. I forget what the word is, but there's a way you can reopen the case and challenge it and do all this kind of stuff. But I just figured, why would I do that? Obviously, the judge has told me what she thinks. If it's not an appellate review, I'm just going to go back to the same judge and say the same thing. That seems stupid. And it would cost money to open it. and it would cost money to go back there, and it takes a lot of time. It's like a 10 or 11 hour round trip in the car to Virginia.
Yeah, that's sure.
Or you take the train, and you're still spending time and money to get there. So I just said, you know what? Forget it. I don't need to talk about Nina. I'll just forget it. And I was going on about my business. Now, there were times that she came up and I was referring to her as a janky bitch and a person that I'm not allowed to talk about. But I was doing that because I objected to the process and I was criticizing what I felt was an unconstitutional order against me, specifically trying to not mention her. And by using those alternate names, I thought I was in compliance. And particularly when, so Ivan Rakelin mentioned her name in June of 2023. And that had me very worried because it was pretty new. Ivan Rakelin is a guy who, if people don't know, he's an attorney in Virginia. I met him on Capitol Hill in Congress at the Twitter Files hearing, and I handed him my Twitter coup document. He was very enthusiastic about it, had me on his show. I should have seen this a mile away. His show was on Mike Lindell TV. And I already knew Mike Lindell was an idiot. So I should have known that Ivan was an idiot, but whatever. Needed publicity, needed to expand my platform that Nina and her friends are constantly attacking. So I need to get coverage and go on shows with people like Ivan Rakelin, or at least that was my perception at the time. So I was on his show, he was on my show. I thought we were becoming friends. He's an attorney, and I said, hey, I need an attorney for this thing happening with Nina. And he told me, well, I'm licensed in New York, even though I live in Virginia, so I can't represent you. But let me introduce you to some attorneys. We had 2 or 3 phone calls with other attorneys talking about the case, explaining everything about it, seeking legal representation. By the way, even though Rakelin never represented me, those phone calls contained attorney-client privileged information. When he participated in those phone calls, helping me in my effort to retain counsel, I and the information I shared with him were protected by attorney-client privilege. So when he went and blurted it out on the video, he was specifically violating my attorney-client privilege. I spoke to him about that in Butler, Pennsylvania when I ran into him. And so, if Nina were really scared, if somebody were stalking you and after hiring an attorney and going to court and going to all that trouble, you obtained a restraining order. For instance, if I get one against George's brother, the second he violates it, I'm going to get the court involved or the cops involved, because the reason I get a restraining order is to keep that fucking psychopath away from me. Okay? What I'm alleging is the reason Nina got this was to strategically weaponize it. Because if she were truly afraid that I were a threat to her, something that she directly contradicted under oath, she said, I never actually thought Jason was going to harm me. I think she said that twice, words to that effect. I'll check the transcript. But you see, if she did legitimately fear bodily harm or assault or criminal activity, you would think the second the restraining order was violated, she would contact the police, she would contact the court, and I was very worried that that might happen because this unconstitutionally overbroad restraining order is written in such a way that even the words of Ivan Rakelin could be construed as violating the thing. And I found case law in Virginia that said, no, you can't do that. You can't write a restraining order that's so broad that a third party could violate it. But Judge Wheat doesn't care. She doesn't care. So I guess when nothing happened after Rakelin said her name, I figured, well, maybe this thing is not as strict, and maybe my understanding of it is as long as I just don't, as I don't say her name or say anything threatening, or certainly not contact her. See, that's the other interesting part. And again, I could be wrong about this, but my understanding is the statute, the law, the criminal law says you can't go within 150 feet of her, which I had no intention of doing. You can't directly contact her by telephone, email, direct message, text, etc. and stuff like that. It doesn't say you can't make social media posts that peripherally might be maybe about her or contain something that somebody else might have said about her. It doesn't say that in the criminal law. That's a little something that the judge added in with her handwritten, you know, that's her. These judges love to, that's the her doing whatever she wants. That's Judge Wheat saying you can't even make a social media post about this person. Well, now we can get into a whole legal debate about, is it about her? Is it about Ivan Raiklin? Is it about a lawsuit against Chris Boozy? What is this post really about? And how much content related to something, you know, we're here on the Highline. Is this video about that bush? It's in it. Now I've made it about the bush. Is it about any of these individual people who happen to be showing? What does about mean? You know, if we really want to get down to it, you want to enforce this thing, it's got to be particularized. You know, it's not about figuring out what this means after the fact, 2 years later, but that is what they want to make it. It is what they tried to make it. And so, what happened was, nothing was said in June of 2003 when Ivan Raiklin mentioned her name directly on the video, clearly with the intention of getting me in trouble. Why else would he do that? He had read the order. This is why there's no doubt that Ivan Raiklin intended to harm me. He wanted me to violate this restraining order and I could have been put in jail. And by the way, that's what Nina was trying to do. She's been to the cops. She lied to the cops again in 2025. I allege, I believe, evidence will prove that, will show that. So she's maliciously lying to try to get me stuck in jail. I could be killed in jail. You know who's in jail? A lot of bad people. I don't know where this weird foot sculpture they were talking about is. There was some, I thought it was on the Highline. I guess these new stairs are still not opened. So I was going to forget about it. And then stupid Nina couldn't leave well enough alone. She had to light a fire under her own feet. So this year, in May, I was back visiting my parents. My mother's recovered from this spinal surgery. She had another surgery. They're getting old, like I said. So I was there once again, shopping for them, cooking for them, driving them places, looking around, you know, looking after them, etc., trying to help take care of them. And I get this email from Nina's lawyer saying, oh, can you participate? This is on May 28th, saying, oh, can you participate in a hearing on May 30th? And I was like, what? I was out taking care of some errands and I saw this thing and I was like, what planet do you think it is okay on to give me 2 days notice for a hearing? No, I can't be in an out-of-state hearing 2 days from now. You need to reschedule this for sometime 14 days from now or more. And then I started looking at my emails and I realized 6 minutes prior to this email from Nina's attorney, there was an email from the court saying, hey, how much time is it going to take to do this thing because we might have to reschedule it or something like that. The court just sent a general scheduling notice about this hearing, which they normally wouldn't do. Normally they would just have the hearing, and if the court didn't have any kind of schedule conflict or whatever prompted this email, they would just, I think I'm about to abort this mission because I just don't think there's any kind of statue here. We've reached the statute of limitations on this statue. So the court sends an email at 11:50 a.m. and 6 minutes later at 11:56 a.m. Nina's deceptive fatso scumbag lawyer sends me an email saying, oh yeah, we filed this stuff on May 14th, 2 weeks prior. Why didn't she email me 2 weeks prior when they filed it with the court? Wouldn't that be a good faith effort to inform me of a hearing if they really thought I was doing something wrong that needed to be rectified, rather than trying to weaponize this process by tricking me and trying to obtain an uncontested hearing that I wouldn't be at Doesn't it seem like that's what they were trying to do? Manipulate the procedure. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. They knew I wasn't home. She's tracking every single video I do, except for a May 2nd video titled Fort Lauderdale Air Show with Sal Greco. She says she never saw that video. She didn't know I was in Florida. I say that's false. I say they deliberately tried to serve this at a time when they knew I wouldn't be there, so that I would miss it. But anyway, because of all that confusion, the hearing got rescheduled. And there was all this back and forth about, well, when can you do it? And I told them I could do it the 17th, I could do it the 19th. They said, can you do it? No, I told them I could do it the 19th, I could do it the 20th. They said, what about the 16th or the 17th? And I said, yes, I could do it the 16th or the 17th. And then it got scheduled on the 18th, the one day that I said I couldn't be there. Now, whether that was done by the court or them or whatever happened in court that made that the scheduled day, they could have allowed me to appear telephonically. The court and her were both trying to make it so that I wouldn't be there on the 18th. And I've learned since then why they did that. See, this very complicated statute allows the judge to keep extending this. The restraining order was set to expire on June 8th, 2025. And that was what I had decided. I was just going to wait. And I wasn't going to contact Nina. I was going to resume reporting on things that she's doing with the American Sunlight Project that appear to be illegal, because you're not allowed to do illegal stuff. And you're not allowed to steal people's tax money by illegally claiming to run a nonprofit and telling people they're going to get tax exemptions if they make donations to your thing as a 501c3 project. That's materially misleading. Where is the 1023 with the IRS? Where is the EIN? Where is the determination letter? Where are the articles of incorporation? Where are the bylaws? Where is the first year 990? None of this stuff has been filed. Those public domain facts and that evidence causes me to believe there is illegal activity underway, and so I'm going to talk about it because it's a matter of public interest and concern. Money being stolen, it would seem. But I think she doesn't want me talking about that, so she's weaponizing this process to try to get me to shut up and make it illegal for me to talk about her, even if what I'm saying is factual. That's what I think. Yeah, we got no, this is where we had Zoran Mamdani just a few months ago, and it was Maniac Central. Now everything is calm. Maybe the maniacs are at the beach. Maybe they all went to Washington, D.C. So anyway, the reason I couldn't go there on June 18th was because that was the date for Goodman versus the Allegheny medical examiner. And I was very interested in having that hearing, particularly when I thought the judge was going to honor my subpoena and compel the Beaver County ESU to present this evidence in the form of the original HEIC photograph from Detective Gian Vito's phone. But of course, that judge, Judge Regan, he said, no, we're allowing them to quash the subpoenas. So I got an idea at the last minute. I said, well, wait a minute. Why can't I just seek a continuance of that hearing and make it happen later? I'm the petitioner in that hearing. And I even said to myself, you know what, if I have to, I could just miss that hearing. Nothing bad will happen to me. So luckily, they did grant me a continuance in that hearing, and it's going to be happening July 18th. So we still get an opportunity to move in Goodman versus the Allegheny County Medical Examiner's Office. And just 1 or 2 days before this hearing with Nina, they said, okay, we can do the continuance. And so I went to Virginia and I appeared at the hearing in Jankowitz v. Goodman. And I didn't know that it would do this, but I just figured missing the hearing would be detrimental and I better go there. And what I learned there was, because I was there, it statutorily precluded the judge from extending for another 2 weeks the restraining order. And then the restraining order expired. on June 23rd because she had extended it 15 days. At the May 30th hearing that I wasn't at, the judge had extended it from June 8th to June 23rd. When I showed up on June 18th, the judge said, oh, the statute only says it can be extended if the respondent doesn't show up, and here he is, so I can't extend it. Then, because they had moved to extend it for 2 years, and because the hearing to do that occurred after it had expired, they couldn't extend that. So, the weaponization of this process, I believe, if I understand the outcome correctly, and it's possible that I don't, lawyers can't even read this stuff because it's not on a public docket. Maybe you can interpret what I'm saying, but I do believe that caused them to be unable to extend it, because in the final order, it seemed like the judge wanted to extend it for another 2 years. It really seemed like she did. She even reiterated at this hearing on June 30th. She said, you really crossed a line with that demon spawn comment. And I found it interesting that the judge repeated that, because to me it seems like she's expressing her personal bias, that she found it offensive. And what line? I should have asked, what line did I cross? Because the only line that I could cross to allow her to enforce this would be the line of it being a threat of violence, which I don't see how it could be construed to be that. Calling a particular person a demon spawn, I get it, you might find it to be an offensive insult, but how is it a threat of violence? There's not even a verb in there. I don't get it even now. But anyway, so the thing is lifted. Obviously, I can speak about Nina. They did not determine that I needed to pay her legal fees. I guess the main reason they wanted me to pay her legal fees is that when this all came about, one of the things that they had filed in the court was a certificate of service saying that I had been served by personal service and or U.S. postal mail. And neither of those two things occurred. In fact, they even submitted an affidavit of non-service. So I said, they're lying. I sent an email to the law firm, the owner of the law firm, the CEO of the law firm representing Nina, telling them initially, hey, I'm sure you don't know that this is going on, because I can't imagine that a legitimate law firm would allow such unethical conduct, but your associate is entering this stuff in court, lying about this and that, and I demand that you fire this person, drop this client, and drop this matter. And so then Nina's lawyer entered all kinds of stuff saying that this was inappropriate and I was trying to interfere with the attorney-client relationship, and it caused them to have to write letters and do more stuff, and so I should have to pay $10,000. And the judge didn't explain why, but determined no. So basically, Nina lost. She did not get her 2 years more of me not being able to tell you how she's manipulating nonprofits and tax-exempt law to profit and improperly inure herself, in my opinion, based on public domain evidence that I'm looking at, that you can look at too. Maybe you'll come to a different conclusion, but that's what the evidence tells me. She basically, reopened a thing that I was leaving well enough alone, cost herself $10,000, and didn't get the 2-year extension on the restraining order. Here's the beauty part. This is a unique type of legal situation, in that normally when you're in, it's this quasi-civil criminal thing, because it's in civil court, but if you violate it, it becomes a criminal charge. If you violate the criminal statute, it appears to me that violating the civil part of social media posting or whatever, that doesn't rise to the level of violating the criminal part. So I've been ordered to delete certain posts that were determined to have been made during the period of the time I wasn't supposed to be able to make them. And that is what that filing that I just put in there seeks to clarify and challenge. But the really, truly stupid thing that Nina has done, that she's brought upon herself, is that this precipice, whatever the hell it's called, to reopen the thing.
Bow, bow,
Dude,
bow, bow, bow.
get the fuck away from me, you idiots. See, if this was a concealed carry state, I could have just shot that guy dead, because he just committed civil assault, put me in imminent threat of bodily harm. I thought they were going to attack me. That is something in a lot of states you could kill that guy over. Stupid idiot. I never did anything like that to Nina. The stupid thing that Nina did by opening this case is that it's now, you see, it was 2 years ago, so I couldn't move in the court. I couldn't challenge what the judge was saying. I had missed the appellate period because of all that screwy business with how the appeal works. And now, Nina's reopened it. So, that gives me an opportunity to challenge the constitutionality of what the judge said 2 years ago, and guess what? We're going to do that on this July 4th in defense of the First Amendment, because it's true, I could delete some of these posts, and it's really no big deal. They're 2-year-old Twitter posts. I'm sure people aren't even looking at them anymore. It's not going to harm my Twitter, my X account now. I mean, what an idiot that guy was right there, you know? People, they just really want to provoke violence. So you see, that doesn't ruin the 4th of July, but there's a maniac right there. On this July 4th, in defense of the First Amendment, not for me, this is just on principle for me. It's going to be a lot of work, and it's going to cost a lot of money, and I'm going to probably have to go back to Virginia several times. But I just don't like this idea that scumbags like Nina can weaponize this process, and tyrannical judges like Judith Wheat can decide that they don't like what you have to say, so they're going to use criminal statutes against you and put you in serious risk. See, actually the other day I could have, but it's New York City, so I couldn't carry it, but for 2 years I was disallowed from purchasing a firearm. So if I was walking down the street in Florida or Texas and somebody came up to me and started going pow, 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 and made me think, holy shit, is this kid about to attack me? I couldn't take out a gun and use it to defend myself. In fact, even attempting to purchase a gun would have gotten me arrested because of this thing. And George's brother was very interested in that, wasn't he? He was sending that around to everyone, alerting the NYPD that if I had a firearm, I'm supposed to relinquish it and all that. He's very connected to all of this. Oh yeah, that reminds me, in the beginning of the video, I was talking about some kind comments that people had made about the thumbnail and just some of the AI memes that I create in general. I created a new one for this special event. It's the counter-lawfare hammer is going into pound mode, and it's going to pound certain particular worms into the ground, figuratively speaking. There's Miss Nina with her American Sunlight project. She's shocked. The results of counter-lawfare have shocked her. She doesn't like it when I make these little cartoons about her. Too fucking bad. Sorry, Nina. But that's my AI graphic. I would like to see George's brother go to Alligator Alcatraz. If there's anybody who belongs there, it's definitely him. He's such a scumbag. I imagine the alligators would get indigestion if they got a taste of his vile flesh. He's such a horrible piece of shit. He really deserves to go to jail for the rest of his life, you know? These people want me to go to jail, and they're manipulating the law, lying, really trying to harm me. So thanks for listening to all that, everybody. I hope you have a great 4th of July. If you aren't already sponsoring the show, please become a sponsor on subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. You're going to really help the counter-lawfare effort. In 1997, Rudy Giuliani eliminates the fare for the Staten Island ferry. Is that still the case? That's a good idea. Get people from Staten Island into New York City. See, the reason that's a good idea is there's not that many people on Staten Island, and there's not that many good ways to get from Staten Island to Manhattan. So that's going to spur commerce. By charging people to drive a car in New York City, that's having the opposite effect. That's making people not want to come to New York City, as you can see today. So, you know, the city steals $9 from people, but all these businesses suffer. I guess most people are at the beach today. You can also become a sponsor with cryptocurrency if you'd like on Odyssey, or regular money on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. Also, people who follow me on X at JG_CSTT, subscribe for $5 a month, and you'll also get the sponsor exclusive content. You'll be supporting everything I'm doing in counter-lawfare, helping me keep the show going. By the way, the purpose of counter-lawfare is to stop these criminal fucking assholes who are engaged in lawfare, the weaponization of the law. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Hit the wrong thing. There we go. There's a lot of glare on the screen. I can't really see the screen too easily. Yeah, counter-lawfare is an important thing. The idea is to stop lawfare, stop the weaponization of the law. So there's going to be a bunch of different actions. It's actually all one action, but a bunch of different motions launched in this newly revived Jankowicz v. Goodman. Yeah. Even though I essentially won, there are aspects of that order that I object to. And I'm going to be submitting an objection in addition to that. There are other motions as well. I won't talk about those yet, but Nina says she wants to use your tax-exempt or non-tax-exempt nonprofit funds to make it more expensive to tell lies. But she also thinks that truthful statements are lies, and her opinions and nonsense that comes out of her corrupt mind, that's the truth, according to her. This is disinformation. This is this manipulation of language. Well, it's going to become very expensive for people who want to engage in lawfare, because what's happened over the past 8 years is I've become a hardened target. And I believe Nina is deeply embedded in this lawfare network with Benjamin Wittes. She claims to not know Benjamin Wittes and to have never spoken to him, but he seems to be on her board of advisors for her pseudo 501c3, 501c4. Is that legal? To have your board consist of people that you've never spoken to? Is that a legitimate board? Maybe the IRS needs to look at this. She's doing so many things that appear on the surface to be criminal. And I think that's what's motivating her to act against me. That's what I think. That's my pure opinion based on public domain evidence that I've seen. You might look at that evidence, Judge Wheat might look at that evidence and come to some other conclusion, but I encourage Nina to submit all of this as evidence in court. Have your attorney watch it, catalog it, do whatever it is you feel you need to do. It's the future of garbage. This is Eric Adams, the only guy who can save New York City, according to some people. Absolutely crazy. I think people should vote for Curtis Lewa. I'm going to vote for Curtis Lewa. Don't like Eric Adams. Definitely don't like Zoran Mamdani. And I definitely don't like Nina. She is a nasty, nasty bitch. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great 4th of July. The original and only No King's Day.